With Matt Brash done for the year and Gregory Santos not expected to return anytime soon, what are the Mariners going to do about their bullpen? We'll answer that and a whole lot more coming up here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, May 13th, 2024. This is Ty Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, we're going to open up the mailbag like we do here every Monday and answer some of your Mariners questions. But first, I want to shout out our title sponsor, PrizePicks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB. That's all lowercase for a first deposit match up to $100. And also, if you want to hear more from me and Colby and support us along the way, check out our Patreon. The link is in the description, and you can check it all out for free with a 7-day trial. Now, let's get into your questions. We're going to start here with Coach K. Wright, who wants to know, how soon do you believe the Mariners will make a move? Probably a reliever, but any chance they make a move at first base or corner outfield first?
Well, I'm assuming you mean a move outside of the organization.
Trades, waiver
right.
claims, etc., etc., etc.
Treat yourself, yeah.
That's right. Treat yourself 2024.
Yep. So I'm assuming that's what you mean by outside the org. The earliest I could see it, the earliest significant trade that Jerry has made in his tenure here was, right around Memorial Day, the end of May, when they went out and they got Colby and Span as a, kind of a direct counter to losing Cano for half the season. So, that was kind of an unprecedented move because of, that was the last year of their contention window. They knew they were going to probably rebuild after that season anyway. So why not go be aggressive, pay a little bit more money, blah, blah, blah. This year, they're kind of, they think they're in the middle of their contention window. They're not necessarily acting like it, ownership at least, but they should be in the middle of it, not at the end. So are they going to be that aggressive? I don't know, because the rest of the American League West has just kind of allowed them to stay afloat pretty substantially. So thanks to most of the division getting off to poor to mediocre starts. So I would say the earliest we could see it is, at least another week, maybe two. And even then, I'd be pretty surprised if we saw any significant moves until, I would estimate, like the middle of June. I think it's possible we see more significant trades like in May and June than we have in the past. But obviously they're not all going to be Luis Arraez, but I think there will be like notable major leaguers who are traded now and in June, when otherwise we might have had to wait until July. Guys like
we just saw that with Robbie Grossman.
Right. And like somebody like Tommy Pham, who's playing for the White Sox right now and playing pretty well. Like that's a guy who can flip over. And then the Marlins have a couple of guys. We know they were already traded Arraez. We know they're sellers. They don't have to do it now. But if they want to save some money and, not pay these guys for another couple of weeks and get a good prospect for them, or maybe they just think that the deal that they got right now is better than anything they're going to get in July, they might pull the trigger on it. And there's guys like Josh Bell and Tanner Scott and Anthony Bender. And there are dudes on teams that are absolutely out of it. They have no shot of competing this year already, and they would be available. So I think we'll see a few more trades like that than we normally would. One of the benefits of buying this early too, by the way, even if you're like a team like Seattle, even if things kind of go south for you, you can just turn around and trade that player away in July. You know what I mean? So like if the Mariners went and they got Tanner Scott tomorrow and, injuries finally catch up to them, the offense continues to be inconsistent and they're 500 and on July 28th, they could just go and trade Tanner Scott, and they took that shot. So, there are benefits to it. It's probably going to cost a little more if you do it right now, but you do also get the player for a longer period of time. So I think the earliest we could see it is like another 2 weeks or so. I think the earliest that I would be like, okay, like now's the time. Like now we know enough to know how aggressive we need to be. Sometime in the middle of June, so probably about a month. So yeah, it's kind of two answers there. Like I could see Jerry getting somewhat aggressive here in the next, after another 2 weeks or so, I could see him doing it. Uh, I think it's probably about another month before we start having a conversation like, okay, Jerry needs to start being aggressive right now. Like now is the time to
Sure. Sure.
to pay the price. So, I think the earliest though that it's like reasonable to expect Jerry to go out and make some kind of semi impactful trade is another 2 weeks, give or take.
Yeah. I think a trade could really happen anytime. Especially looking at the Marlins because they do have a few interesting pieces there, but that's probably more a Tanner Scott than a Jazz Chisholm, right? If a trade is going to happen with the Marlins at this point in time, maybe once we get to July, we can talk about guys like Chisholm, maybe Brian De La Cruz, but also, you talked about first base, you talked about outfield. They're supposed to get Dom Canzone back here in the next few days, it seems. So once that happens, that could essentially, for lack of a better term, kill two birds with one stone here, where you get a corner outfielder and maybe you play Luke Raley more at first base if you want to do something about first base. But I don't think they're at a point yet where they're going to take away a ton of playing time from Ty France. I think they, like we talked about last week, I think they view this as a very important period for Ty France to essentially play for his future in Seattle over the next 3, 4, 5 weeks before they really start to have real conversations about France's future. So but yeah, so that essentially getting Canzone back, as well as JP Crawford, because Dylan Moore could also play some first base, he could also play some corner outfield as well once he's not having to play shortstop every day. I think those two additions essentially can help you in both of those departments as well. Next question here from D. Panky. How confident are you that there are likely going to be more sellers this year than in previous years? And what would it mean for the Mariners? I don't know how confident I am that there's going to be more sellers this year, especially when you look at like some of the teams that have bad records right now. If that continues for them into July, like the Astros, the Astros are a team that they're not going to sell a ton, right? They're going to try and reload for next year. It's kind of similar to how the Cardinals were last year, where it's like, okay, we think this is just kind of an anomaly and we're going to be able to get back after it next year. So we're going to hold on to most of our pieces. We'll sell off some expiring contracts, maybe some relievers, etc. But that's really the extent of what we're going to do. I think that's going to be the same case for the Astros. Like, I think the best player they could trade, like Alex Bregman maybe, or Chas McCormick. But for the most part, it's probably like Rafael Montero, Victor Garantini, etc. But yeah, there's obviously the Rockies, the White Sox, the Marlins. Like those are the three teams right now that are very obviously out. Then there's some other teams that are like 6 or 7 games under 500, like the Reds, like the Cardinals. So maybe if they continue to take a dive, then it becomes more apparent that they're going to be sellers. But I still see a lot of teams that are just kind of straddling the fence right now of 500. I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know if the Blue Jays are going to sell. I don't know if the Rays are going to sell. I don't know if the Giants and the Diamondbacks are going to sell right now. So I really don't know. But if there are more sellers, to answer your question, yeah, that should in theory help the Mariners, because that means there's probably more teams that are open to pure prospect returns and trade. And that's where the Mariners' strength is, right? Like they don't have really much that they're going to want to sell from their major league roster that ultimately is going to lead to them being better after that trade, on the other side of that trade, whatever that trade may be. So yeah, how do you feel about it, Colby?
Yeah, more true sellers, the better. But I think I think what you might see though is a few more trades like the Paul Sewall trade, where it's two teams that are both kind of in it at the time. Like they're not holding a playoff spot, but they're both have a shot, and they think Seattle obviously didn't like their odds as much as Arizona did. But I think you could see more trades like that. But maybe this time around, it's the Mariners being the aggressor and trading the package to get the immediate help instead of the other way around. So you can still see trades like that, and I think we will see a few of those. But yeah, obviously you want more true sellers, because true sellers are going to be more interested in, Harry Ford than they would be Brian Wu, just for an example. So yeah, you want as many sellers as you can possibly get. I just, because of how, the expanded playoff field and how low the bar is, I guess, to make the play. And not even that, like just to stay in it in August and September is to sell tickets in August and September. And so if an ownership group might not be that interested in selling, even if the odds of them making the playoffs are only like 5%, like they're still going to be like, well, we can still generate some buzz here, just keep these guys. And, maybe we go on a run. Great. If we don't, whatever, we stayed in it long enough that we kind of maximized our ticket, our revenues. So
It's kind of like the
um,
Angels last year.
right. So there are kind of, it's tough to say, there, what constitutes a true seller is really up in the air. Like, we know Oakland's going to be a true seller, but a team like Toronto, like even if they are like 9 games out of a playoff spot in July, or well, 9 games out of the division, and like, four back of the wild card, but they have like
Yeah.
4 teams to pass, blah, blah, blah. They might not sell just so that they can be like,
Yeah.
hey, no, look, guys, we're still in this thing. Like, we still believe in this group, and
They're
they
the
could sell
biggest
more
variable
tickets.
to me right now, because to me, I think if they're like around 500 or they're significantly below 500 by the deadline, they should sell.
Yeah.
And they obviously have some big pieces that they could sell. You know,
Mhm.
Bo Bichette hasn't signed an extension yet. Vlad Jr. hasn't signed an extension yet. Maybe those guys are actually available, right? On top of some other complementary pieces that I think are going to be attractive to teams. But there's also the possibility that they're like, well, we're about to head into the last year on, I think it's Bo's deal or Vlad's deal, both of them. I
Both
don't
of them,
know.
I think.
Yeah, both of them. Like we need to hang on for dear life here and retool for next year while we can still, take advantage of how cheap these guys are right now. But
Right. They might be buyers, even if they're kind of out of
yeah,
it, like buyers for 2025. So
yeah,
yeah, the trade deadline with all these extra playoff spots and the value of just being in a race in August and September, and how easy it is to sell your fan base that you're in a playoff race right now. It makes like who are true sellers and who are true buyers. It makes the whole thing very muddy. It's kind of hard to distinguish between the two a lot of the time. So
yeah,
the more absolute true no brainer sellers that you have, the more beneficial it is to Seattle, because there's A, more options, but also B, there are more teams that are going to look at, hey, we're offering you Harry Ford and Ty Pete, and we don't have the pitching. So here's Ty Pete, here's Harry Ford, and here's Jonathan Clase, and
mhm,
boom, like, are you interested in giving us your above average bat with 2 years of club control now? Are you more interested in giving us Randy Rosarena now? Like,
right.
that we're kind of overpaying with prospects, and that makes sense for you now? Maybe. So yeah, more true sellers the better. I just don't think we're going to see it like significantly more true sellers than we saw last year.
All right, we're going to answer more of your questions coming up here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Policy Genius. Choosing the right life insurance policy is a very important and overwhelming decision, and you want to be able to feel fully confident making that decision. Now you can with Policy Genius, which is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options even offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Plus, your life insurance policy through your work may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. Policy Genius gives you unbiased advice from a licensed expert support team, and there are thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs through Policy Genius. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. You can catch the Mariners' upcoming series with the Royals on the Mariners' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do is search Mariners. All right, let's get back into your questions here on Mailbag Monday. Richard wants to know, I was disappointed in Tyson Miller being DFA'd. I felt he was better than some we kept. Thoughts? I agree. I don't think Edward Bizardo is better than Tyson Miller. I don't think Cody Bolton is better than Tyson Miller. But at the end of the day, we're also splitting hairs here because we're talking about mid-leverage relievers. But I think Miller was certainly not the worst guy of the options that they had, and I was pretty surprised that he was DFA'd by them.
Yeah, it might have been an availability problem too. Like he threw 2 innings in the blowout or blah blah blah. He wasn't going to be available for a couple days, so whatever. But I still would have just demoted
I mean, you
Bizzardo.
DFA a player over
Yeah,
that?
like
Like, that's, yeah.
yeah, you just demote Bizzardo, and he's got an option left. Bolton has options left. You could have just demoted either of them and brought up a fresh arm. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really get it either. It's not my favorite move. We know that the Mariners like Bizzardo, like very clearly. They like a
I
lot
don't
of.
get it. I really
He's
don't. I
got pretty
don't
good
see it with
stuff.
that one.
He's
Yeah.
got pretty good breaking ball, but it's just so inconsistent, and
Yeah.
and so
Yeah. I
and
just don't really see it with him.
Bolton is like the definition of just kind of a middle,
Yeah.
like he's the fifth inning guy, the sixth inning guy, like
Yeah.
that's his role.
Mm,
You're up 8-2, fine, he can pitch because even if he gives up a 2-run bomb, like okay, you're still up by 4. So
mm.
um, that guy's just not that valuable though, and I don't know if Miller's significantly better than either of those guys right now, but he was certainly pitching better than either of those two guys are right now. So it's a little weird. I don't really know like how to explain it. Like I know that he was out of options, but like I maybe they think he's going to clear, but I think there's going to be at least one team
Yeah.
out there who's going to look like, oh, let's take a shot on this guy. He's got a good slider.
OSG wants to know, a little concerned with the bullpen. What immediate moves can the M's take to solidify it outside of trading for arms? So outside of trading for arms, I don't know if there is anything you can do to
Nothing.
solidify it. Yeah. Like, I know they like this guy, Jordan Holloway, who's down in AAA, but he's had issues with walks. I talked about him last week when they had to make the move for Saucedo. Um, he has some experience pitching for the Marlins a couple years back, so maybe that's a guy that they take a shot on at some point here. Yeah, but I don't really think like there isn't like a big arm waiting in Tacoma or AA that you can add to this bullpen that's going to significantly change things that I know, unless they want to like put Logan Evans in the bullpen at some point. But I don't really see the point in doing that. So
I don't even think that would help all that much because we have no idea if Evans' stuff is even going to play up in the bullpen, and it's not like he's striking out a ton of dudes in AA right
yeah,
now. He's averaging less than a strikeout per 9. So, um, I'm sure they were hoping that guy was going to be Carlos Vargas, but he just hasn't really figured out his command yet. He's struggling a little bit in Tacoma. So now stats are a little bit difficult when judging a pitcher in the PCL, but
yeah,
the walks are not that hard to look at and be like, okay, there's still some work to do here. So like if it's not Vargas, Butchery hasn't been all that good. Crable hasn't been all that good, statistically speaking, at least. So I don't think there is like a way to fix it outside of trades. One thing that could help is your starters could get back to going deep into games. We had like a 4-game stretch there where none of the starters got through 5.
hmm,
So now the last 2 games, you've gotten through 6, both of those guys. So that's good. That kind of helps. The offense has scored some runs, so you don't have to. Not every single situation that a reliever enters the game in is a high leverage situation. That helps too.
hmm,
So yeah, outside of trades, like how do you help the bullpen by giving them bigger leads and asking them to get fewer outs,
sure, yeah,
which is not really anything like that.
yeah,
That's the whole goal, anyways. So
but yeah,
if you score more runs, you create more, or you create fewer high leverage situations. So you don't have guys pitching in spots they probably shouldn't be. Um, and if you only have to get 9 outs a night instead of, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 outs a night out of that bullpen, then that's going to help because guys will be fresher, they'll be sharper. So, outside of trades, everybody else kind of has to step up because unless there's some surprise waiting for us in Tacoma that we're not thinking of right now, or there's a waiver claim that they can go out and make, or something like that, there's really not a ton there's really not a ton in your system that's going to help much. So at least not on paper. Now all it takes is one guy to come up and kind of they make a small tweak and boom, all of a sudden, oh look, there's Paul Sewald literally out of nowhere. So
mhm,
not saying that there isn't a guy in the minors, or there isn't a veteran that's floating around out there that can't come in and make kind of this big improvement to the bullpen, but I don't know who that would be. Like I can't even fathom a guess of who that would be right now.
yeah. Just moves wise, purely moves wise. I don't see it, but you never know. Daisy and the Dingo wants to know, any thoughts on Cole Young's slow start in Arkansas this year? A little surprised by it. bit disappointed, but overall, that's just kind of generally the ebbs and flows of a young player down in the minors. He's getting his first taste of Double-A. I'm not too concerned about it, or it hasn't really changed my opinion on Cole Young as a prospect.
No. He's 20 years old in the Texas League.
Yeah.
He's the youngest player by far in the Texas League. So the fact that he's struggling right now, it's not really anything. Like it's a guy learning how to fail, essentially. Although it does, it does paint, or it does give us a pretty good reminder. Remember all the people who are like, Cole Young has to make this team out of spring training. Like, does he have a shot? No, he doesn't. This is why. Like, the difference between Double-A pitching and major league pitching is massive. And, right now Cole Young is struggling with the difference between high A pitching and Double-A pitching. So there's no reason to call him up. There's no reason to send him down or anything like that. You just kind of let him work through it. And this is just kind of the general ebb and flow. And all that's really happened here is that the idea that Cole Young might make his debut this year, taking a hit, probably not going to happen. But that doesn't mean that he can't be even a big part of the Mariners next year. And there's still time for him to turn it around and maybe get a cup of coffee in September. But this is nothing. It's a young player struggling at a new level, very young player, considering his competition, struggling at a new level, and you just got to let him work through it. Like they didn't rush Cole Young to Double-A. Like he earned this promotion. He was ready for it. And now he's just got to find a way to work through it. Like all big leaguers will have to at some point.
All right, so we're going to answer a few more of your questions coming up here in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is once again brought to you by PrizePicks. Baseball season is in full swing, so don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBI, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. You can also get in on the basketball playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a whole new level during the postseason. Download PrizePicks today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for catching us here on Mailbag Monday. You can catch the Mariners' upcoming series with the Royals on the Mariners' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. All you have to do is search Mariners. All right, let's get back into your questions. Cal's Bobbleface wants to know, where would this team be without Dylan Moore? Yes, Colby. Where would this team be without Dylan Moore?
It's kind of an accusatory tone for a long-time Dylan Moore stan, but okay. Excuse me, whose flag list was he on?
It's true. It's true.
Was it yours? No.
You made the heel turn. No, as we all know, you made the heel turn this year. You are now the number one Dylan Moore stan.
That's right. I'm still waiting for him to send me his jersey, but whatever.
Right.
Because I'm not spending $300 on a Dylan Moore jersey, especially not one from this year. But
you have also only signed one autograph in your life, and it has been on a Dylan Moore card.
That is the only thing I will ever autograph. So you guys want an autograph, which is kind of weird. But if you want one, bring a Dylan Moore card.
Right.
But no, I mean, Dylan's been pretty good. He's certainly had his really bad games at the plate, and that's who Dylan Moore is, right? Like we're 6 years into the Dylan Moore saga, whatever you want to call it, era, and he's been pretty much the same guy the entire time, right? Like he'll go on hot streaks where he looks like an everyday player, and you're like, this is awesome. He can play all over. You can put him in the lineup every day, and then inevitably in the same time span, he'll go 0 for 9 with 6 strikeouts, and you're just sitting there like, oh, this is not an everyday player, and he's not. Dylan Moore is not an everyday player. Dylan Moore is best suited for the role that he had coming into the year, which is, you're going to mostly face lefties. You're going to play in the outfield a little bit, but you're also going to play some short, some third, some second. Like we'll mix you in the infield, but you're going to be primarily hitting against left-handed pitching, which has traditionally been your strong side. We're going to ask you to come off the bench and steal some bases. We're going to ask you to hit some home runs. We know you're going to strike out a ton. We know you're going to walk a lot too, though, and you're just going to be a solid defender pretty much wherever we put you. And so, Dylan's been really good, and he's covered for JP, and it sounds like JP is going to be back a lot quicker than we thought. He's talking about how he's going to play in this homestand, which,
you got 3 days, pal.
Yeah, with no rehab assignment. but whatever. So we'll see if JP does come back. But yeah, obviously he held down the fort very nicely. I wouldn't say he was like a massive plus. It's just too inconsistent for Dylan Moore to be like an obvious plus, because for every great game he had some really bad ones, and they all kind of even out. But Mariners shortstop production didn't fall apart, right? It didn't collapse, and Demo certainly didn't do so poorly at the plate that it was just an automatic out every time he came up. No, he was very solid, and it goes a long way. And again, this is what gives you some faith in just your infield depth in general. Like if one of these guys goes down for a couple weeks, it's not ideal, but I have Dylan Moore. I can survive this because I know Demo is going to give me something in the field on the bases or in the batter's box. Like he's going to help me win a couple games while I wait for this guy to come back. So if it's a long-term injury, you don't want Dylan Moore to be the answer to replace. Like if Polanco goes down tomorrow, knock on wood, for the rest of the year, Dylan Moore can't be your answer. Can he be part of the stopgap until you find your full-time answer? Yeah, absolutely he can. Like he's a valuable player, and this is why he's worth the $8 million extension they gave him over 3 years. And that was a bargain. It was always going to be a bargain. And it's showing you why it's a bargain as he's filled in for JP very well these last, what's it been, about 3 weeks now?
Yeah. It's going to be nice once JP is back to put Dylan in a, in his more preferred role, right? Where you can start to play matchups with him better. He can start to move around the field defensively. He's just a really solid role player. Right? He's one of the more underrated role players in all of baseball, and he's helped you stay afloat at that position where you lost your captain, right? And that can be a massive blow to you, but it really hasn't over the last 3 weeks. Like it's been noticeable, but not that much because Demo's been really solid, right? And he's hitting for some power, stealing bases, he's walking, he's doing a little bit of everything, right? And that's just what Dylan Moore does. Last question here from Alex. I know we've said it time and time again, but do you think Julio is finally turning a corner? Hit the ball very hard this series. Some luck didn't go his way, but the game on Sunday was very encouraging. Yeah, let me see it for another week, right? Let's see if he doesn't, go 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts tonight, right? And then the next night goes 1 for 4 with a single and 3 strikeouts, right? Like, let's see some more consistent damage from Julio before we say like, hey, he's back.
Yeah, I mean the good news from this weekend is that he crushed 3 fly balls. Like had a home run, missed a second home run by 8 inches to a foot, hit just below the yellow, and then he probably should have had a double, maybe even a triple. The ball that he hit into right center field that Butler ran down right in front of me, that was annoying. Like he hit it right to the deepest part of right center field. Like if he pushes it a little bit more down the line, it's an easy home run. So Julio very easily could have had 3 home runs in a 6-7 at-bat stretch. So sure, he got a little unlucky on Saturday, but we've seen Julio do this before too, where he's hit he's gone in a series and he's had 8 hard hit balls in the series. And you're like, oh, good, that's a great sign. And it's like, even when he struggles, Julio hits the ball pretty hard.
Oh yeah.
So the important thing here is that he's elevating, right? They were line drives and fly balls that he was hitting hard, not pop-ups, not ground balls. So certainly it was a positive weekend for Julio, but announcing that he's turned the corner now, we're not going to do that anymore. Not off of a 1 series sample size. So we'll see how it looks tonight against Kansas City. It sure would be great if he did. I mean, it's funny how different the offense looks when Julio comes up and you're like, oh, he's probably going to do something. Like, look at how much fun the offense looked on Sunday and how much pressure that took off of a lineup. Like that was not the Mariners A lineup. Far from it. Nope. Like that's about as bad as the Mariners can make their lineup on paper. They scored 8 runs. Why?
Clearly what you're saying is Julio was the reason that Sebi Zavala hit that home run.
Has Sebi Zavala hit a home run in a game that Julio hasn't?
That's a fair point.
So,
all right. So as you guys know, my birthday was a couple weeks ago. And before we get out of here, Colby bought me a birthday gift that didn't show up on my birthday. It actually showed up, Friday night, I think?
I guess. Saturday, I think.
Yeah.
Stupid U.S. Canadian customs.
So he wants me to open it here on the show. So we'll see.
We'll see if Ty has to blur it out.
I'm scared. I'm scared. All right, so I've already cut it open here, so we don't have to do that whole thing here. So I'm gonna try and open this. I assume this is like a card or something because it's a pretty flat package. Okay. So we got like some cardboard here.
Actually, not a fan of how that's packed, but okay.
Yeah, it's 2 like pieces of.
Ew.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, hopefully
there's something. Okay, it's the JSA certified
certificate of authenticity.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, you're gonna make me cry.
People don't know this about me. I am a great gift giver.
Dude, this is bringing all the emotions back. I haven't gotten over this.
Well, show
yet.
the people.
I haven't gotten over.
They can't really see it.
For those that are just listening on the audio, it is a signed picture of Pete Carroll holding up the Vince Lombardi trophy, Super Bowl 48, which is absolutely going on my wall over there.
So you have to get the frame, but
yeah, I'm a very big Pete guy, and I took Pete's essential firing pretty hard. So that's
same.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you have to get me anything Pete Carroll related.
Right. This is amazing. Thank you. I really do appreciate this. Thank you so much. That's wow. That's really cool. It's in gold marker too. Really cool.
I really didn't know that it was in gold marker, but okay. I'm glad it's a detail you thought to mention.
Sure. I noticed that. I thought it was cool that it was in gold marker. That's awesome. There we go. All right. So that is going to do it for our show as I put that over there safely. But before we get out of here, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dan Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dan Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace. Always compete.